I'm a real boy, a real boy. I have a voice. Can you all hear me? Cynthia said, please like and subscribe. Anyone today say, oh, we hear. That's all I needed, as you know, every time. Should see in a second. Anticipation is building. I've been missing this. Hey, welcome back. Welcome me back. You've been here all along. I took a little bit of time off to do this other thing. You may know about the Substack, which we had a hell of a day. I'm going to talk more about it. I see my compatriot, Mr. Michaels, has already arrived. Look at him. Johnny on the spot. I guess today you didn't have such a big pee to take. But thank you for being here. Missed Tuesday because I was over in Substack, as I'm sure you all know, for 12 hours. We did set some records there. It was kind of cool. Had some amazing people. We'll talk about some of the guests. One of those guests, in fact, a new contributor to this channel and the Substack, David Schuster, Emmy Award-winning anchor and just all-around great guy, will be joining us at some point soon, somewhere between 2:15 and 2:30. So why don't I get Tony in here right away? And we'll take it from there. But I appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about Jasmine Crockett because, I have a crush on her, as Tony said, because
me too.
She keeps making the thumbnails because she keeps crushing it, and she crushes the right people.
Did you
so
do the question that she answered? What would she say to Elon? Is that your lead?
That isn't even it, because the thing is that
there's
what
another
she said
one
about Marge Taylor, just and her certain obsession with a certain somebody's junk she said in committee. And she mocked her and and then she also went after Donald Trump. So what do you know? I missed who else she went after. It just seems like constantly she is doing, as we like to say, amplifying good by taking on evil.
I'll say this real quick if I can, about when someone like Jasmine Crockett speaks out like this. Not only does it show how you should get in these people's faces, but it also shows how weak and cowardly they are when you get in their faces. All this bluster about how like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are going to come after all these people and blah, blah, blah. And all this faked tough guy routine stuff.
Fake news, man.
Right. It just absolutely shows 100% that when it comes down to it, they're not even going to go after someone like Jasmine Crockett because she's speaking out against them. So how are they going to do it to other people? Like this, that's the, I think that more than anything just gives permission structure to really just keep going after these people the way that she does. And we watched the video of Brian Schatz did. Jim McGovern is also really good at this. There's several others that are Chris Murphy. Now, again, there are some Democrats that are trying to debate decorum, but there's some that are not, and they're sick and tired of the whole decorum thing because there is no.
But I feel like the momentum has shifted to where the ones who used to preach decorum and win are being pushed aside. Because again,
should be.
A lot of those folks are in leadership, and so the simple thing is Jasmine Crockett and AOC and Chris Murphy and Brian. I haven't figured out. I used to say Schatz too. I've been told it's pronounced Shots, which I understand why.
Is it Shots? I say
but
Schatz.
I think Schatz is so much cooler. I mean,
I don't know. I pronounce names wrong all the time.
If I could
I think it's great to call it Schatz because really, honestly, they can make fun of it a lot. Like MAGA can make fun of it. And the more they make fun of him, the more he'll be out there. And the more his message will be in front of people. And that's really good. And that's one thing that I think like Jasmine Crockett understands, AOC understands, even though I have disagreed a lot with some of the policies that AOC, I
want to be clear. I've said that before too. And I have some real problems in a few areas, but overall, I agree with AOC. And what I would say is I have some policy disagreements, but we're all together. And if you're fighting the bad guys, if you're fighting the people that are trying to end democracy, I'm on your team. So,
the one thing I'll say that I agree with AOC on is that there are two classes in this country, and there's a wide disparity between those classes. There's the monopoly state, the billionaire mafia class, and then there's the great American working class, and there's a far distance in between those two. Like literally, even some of the richest people in Congress, they are closer to being homeless than they are closer to being as rich as Elon Musk. I mean, that's
and that's what I point out to people all the time, and they take that, I think, out of context. They're like, "Oh, well, so you're saying it's tough being a millionaire?" That's never the point. Because I did that video on the beach with the whole red tide thing. People saying, "Oh, I feel sorry," because I said you can't swim here even if you have $15 million, right? And my point wasn't, "Oh no, we better feel sorry for someone who has 15 million. They have it rough." It's more, we should be working with them because they should get too and understand, like the rest of us, that in a normal world they'd be in a lot of control of their destiny. In this one, they can't even swim on the beach because there's a few people at the top who are the ones getting all of the biggest tax cuts and the ones getting all the government handouts and the ones getting all the deregulation that are running things. And so really most people should be with us, no matter what their level of wealth, because it is these billionaires who are the ones who, the vast majority of them, and I even bring up some of the exceptions like Mark Cuban, who's a terrific guy, but for the most part, most of them are people that I guess seemingly do not care about anything. Do not care.
You know, I want to go back to Mark Cuban real quick, and the reason why I want to say this is because
Julie, I have to say this quickly. This is not a rerun. This is Cliff Schechter. I am here live.
Yeah,
I just answered you, so you know. No, I understand because the last 2 days I've been gone.
Yeah,
because I was doing the thing at Substack. I don't even think I put reruns up. I just think I left it. But no, we're doing it live. So
we're doing it live. So I'll say something about Mark. I guarantee you that if the United States Congress passed a bill that raised the taxes on the billionaire class in this country, I bet Mark Cuban would not shed one tear. I don't think his goal is to make sure that he has the biggest tax cuts that he could possibly have. And one of the reasons why I actually believe that is because he endorsed Kamala Harris full throat.
Who was raising his taxes.
Right. And so Warren Buffett the same way. Warren Buffett has actually testified in front of Congress, if I'm not mistaken, saying, "Hey, raise my taxes. Like this is the dumbest thing you people are doing is not taxing people like me. Like I have so much money, I will never be able to spend it. I'm trying to give it away because I get so much of it."
Right. Trying to get, I think it was the estate tax back. And somebody has joined us early who's even smarter, well, easily smarter than me. He's in the same sort of, area as you, Tony, but Mr. David Schuster here is on a whole other level.
Oh, hey, David. I didn't know I was going to be on with the famous David Schuster.
I didn't know I was going to be on with the famous Tony Michaels.
Oh, no. Don't do that. Don't do that. You know, I used to watch you on MSNBC, so like I'm going to fangirl.
Tony, you're not that old. You're too young to watch MSNBC.
I'm going to turn 40 next month, my friend. And my son is 19. He just turned 19 last month.
Wow.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah. I age really well. I age really well. I age really well. I'm 95 years old. So
we saw that TV show about the Ozarks. And again, I, like everybody else in America, what I see on TV informs everything I believe. So I know that what I saw in Ozark must be exactly the way everything goes there.
Yes.
So I know your whole life, Tony. Like I know your
life.
Right,
exactly. You know who exactly I am, man. David, I want to tell you did a great job the other day on the 12-hour live stream kicking it off.
Wow.
Because David was great, everyone, because Cliff was still duct taping his phone to the holder while David was holding everything. Yeah, there it is. David, you did a great job coming in and kicking off that 12-hour live stream, which is record breaking at this point. So I was glad it was you that.
Tony, but it is pretty funny. I mean, when Cliff said he wanted me hour one, and I'm thinking, okay, hour one is anybody who's sort of done this kind of stuff, live broadcasts or streaming. Hour one is where you have sort of the most like technical issues that you suddenly pop up and got to figure out how to solve. And I'm like the least tech savvy, so I'm thinking, Cliff, you really want me at the beginning when I don't even know if my own microphone's going to work or stream, and you're going to like be kicking off this extravaganza? but thank
Can
God.
I say two things about that, David?
Great.
What can I say two things about that? First of all, you're
Yeah.
not the least tech savvy. Okay, so let's start with that. And then let's next go to the fact that, and this is the God's honest truth. Though I'm not a religious person, but it's an expression, so we'll just say it. But this is just the simple truth. You're one of the best anchors I've ever seen anywhere, anytime. You are a naturally incredible anchor, and I think you can tell I am authentic when I am saying that. So the thing is that who am I going to start off with at 8 a.m.? Who's going to give me confidence, when I'm starting this thing and I'm saying, oh my God, I've got 11 more hours after this, and I'm going to be talking to all these folks or whatever. And that, I used to fanboy when it came to you too. I still kind of do. I just got to know you really well because I remember watching on TV and being the guy that like was still, back in the olden days, my friends, kids, the 2000 aughts, when we first got phones with cameras. We'd sit there.
That was right before the 1900s, right? Wasn't that right before the right after the 1900s?
Right after the horse and carriage went away. We got there, and I would watch David, and I would be like, this guy's amazing. And when you were on there, and then I got to know you really well.
That's so amazing, but that's okay.
David, you're a great. I mean, you gave me confidence, and that's just a simple truth. So why did I want you there at 8 to 9? Because I knew I would be better the rest of the day if you were there from 8 to 9.
So thank God, David, that you were in the first hour, because it would have been a horrible mess for 12 hours.
I would have sucked so bad.
I mean, you had some remarkable guests. I mean, look, the key to a really, great show is, have good guests and have sort of a strategy about where you're going and sort of know where you're going to go and have interesting people to talk to. And you had all of that for like 12 hours. It was an extravaganza. And I have to say, and I think you guys are already sort of tooting the horn here, but I'm going to toot it as well. From what I understand, Cliff, this is like the most number of live viewers Substack has ever had for anything. Yeah. So, and you blew it away. I think the previous record you were telling me like 40,000.
We doubled it, I think. Well, yeah, because I mean, I'm not, math may not be my thing, but I can do this math. I think it was just under 40,000 they had said, and we hit 82. So yeah.
What strikes me, I mean, look, there are platforms we can all sort of and have gone to and will continue to go to, YouTube and all sorts of different platforms that are used to having lots of millions of people who will watch a live stream. I never really associated Substack with like video streaming until you were sort of talking about it, several weeks ago and what your plans were. And then I thought, okay, there's some people like a Jim Acosta and some others who are starting to do this, and Dan Harris, but I mean, the idea that Substack, which I sort of see as more of a competitor originally with like Medium and some of the other places that have columns, they are now in the game, thanks to you, Cliff, and Tony, and all of your friends and everybody else. Substack is now in the streaming game, and that is a big deal for them.
That is a big deal. And David, I want to ask you, I got a question. I got a question to ask you, David, because I know you've been in media for a long time and broadcasting for a long time, and you've been on the side of cable news, you've been on the side of network, I'm sure, and then at YouTube, you've had success there. What do you see? Because this is something's happening, right? There's like this shift. There's these cracks that are happening. It's almost like a media seismic earthquake kind of thing. I mean, we saw there's a bunch of people that were, exited out of MSNBC, CNN. We don't really know what's going to happen to cable news, if anyone's even going to watch it anymore. I mean, what do you make of all this? Because you're kind of from this business. So what do you make of all this?
I mean, I sort of describe both the broadcast networks and cable news as that plane that is crashing. And the only question is it going to be like a nosedive into the ground, or is it going to be a more sort of gradual descent? But it's still
that might not be
down.
A great metaphor right now, David. I'm just saying.
We're trying to find people who can make the glide a little bit more sort of peaceful, but it's still sort of gliding down. And the question is, does it go straight into the ground, or does it sort of glide a little bit? And where I see such a big difference is that, if you go back to, say, my heyday at MSNBC from, say 2002 to 2010 when I left, I would do a piece, say, for Hardball, 3 or 4 minute video package for Hardball, or I'd anchor a show, whatever it was. And you might have, 400,000 people over the course of an hour who would watch if they were actually sitting in front of the TV at the right time and they were paying attention to you as opposed to making dinner or feeding the dog or whatnot. Now, the numbers, in a way, are so much better on these streaming platforms where people at their own pace, they can find you, they'll watch the video, you sort of have their attention, And I think in some way there's a stronger connection now between YouTube news people like yourself and Cliff and me. I think there's a stronger connection between us and our audience than there ever was when I was at cable news at MSNBC or before that, or Fox. Now, those networks and cable channels, because they still have the fancy production studios and it looks great on screen, even if that not that many people are watching, there's still a force to be reckoned with. And I think they still, to a certain extent, set the agenda in terms of where the guests go first. But in terms of actually moving the audience and bringing attention to certain issues to the audience, I think streaming, regardless of the platform, whether it's YouTube or Substack, whatever, I think that's the name of the game now. And I think it's a much stronger connection than I ever had at cable news, if that makes sense.
Where was the point that you think that this shift started? Can you find because I'm interested in this, obviously, because I'm in the business, and I'm competing for views and that sort of thing. But where do you think was because I'm very interested here. It's like, where do you think the shift was? Like, is there a certain moment that you pick out, or is it just a feeling that's happening in country? Because I know you travel around and talk to different people, and you have them on camera with microphones in front of them faces sometimes. So where do you think that moment happened?
That's a great question. I'd say for me, it goes probably back to when Cliff started We Act Radio in DC, which would be what, Cliff, 2011, 2012. And we had, a couple of us were sort of doing some shows, and there was technology that was being made available that we could take, the Saturday show that I was doing, or the Bill Press show, which would air on We Act Radio. And literally you put cameras in the radio booth and it becomes sort of a produced TV show. I mean, it was sort of rudimentary, but it was a radio show that was able to then stream and post on YouTube. And I remember thinking at the time, this is the future. And as the cameras get better and the editing equipment gets better, and, back then, for example, if I still wanted to, download clips, suppose I wanted to download videos from CNN or MSNBC, or I wanted to take a White House news conference, you still needed like satellites and download links at your news organization to be able to pull that in. I think the moment maybe 6 or 7 years ago where we got to the point where with just one app and a couple of clicks, you can now download anything from YouTube in a matter of seconds. I think that's also when the game changed in terms of being able to use elements and clips. And also, I mean, look at the studios that each of us have, yours, Tony, and Cliff, and me with these, silly bookshelves. I mean, 12 years ago, to do something like this and to have it sort of stream in the quality that we have now would have required a multi-million-dollar television production facility. Now,
remember they'd call you, something went wrong on Skype,
laptops and a couple of lights, and it's just as good. So I think the technology got better, and then the audience got used to realizing, okay, maybe I'm not hearing everything I want to hear from the corporate media, and maybe there is something about independent voices out there and fresh perspectives, and that there are people who are willing to sort of do the homework and do the reporting in a way that maybe some of the mainstream media doesn't do anymore.
Yeah, I remember getting called on like a few times by cable, probably MSNBC or whatever, and going on Skype as like a last resort when like there was something failing, and they couldn't, like the studio's down, and it's like it was like it almost feels like dial-up now, right? Now it was probably a decade and a half ago, but
does Skype still exist?
I don't even know. Does it? I don't know if Skype still exists. It
was
like completely unreliable.
I don't know if Skype's still a thing. I have no idea.
Right. Yeah. I think it may be the Friendster of MySpaces is what it may be. I mean, like they couldn't, you just had to hope that it would work, and they would do it as like a last resort. And that there's no doubt, even since I did this audio podcast, even, that I stopped doing a couple of years ago. And every once in a while we'd have video. And even then, so 5-6 years ago, was completely different than today. I'll say one more thing, and then I love the back and forth you guys are having. You're talking about some smart stuff, but my older son Dougie, who I obviously my kids are awesome, and I try to spend as much time as I can with them. We're watching one of those series that I never caught. I love good streaming series. I never watched The Walking Dead, so we're now watching that together. And we were just watching, a penultimate episode of what was it, season 1 or whatever. And, if I'm rooting it for you now, you're way too late, like me, on this. But I don't have to tell you even what blew up. Just say there was a huge explosion at the end, and there was one part where the fire was coming out, and it was so obviously fake, right? And this is 2010, all right? This isn't like 1940, okay? And you're watching it, and he just looked at me. He's like, It's like, Dad, some of my friends can do a better job right now on iMovie. You know,
I mean, AI could create a better explosion probably than what that could. Which I think
David makes fun of himself, but David edits his videos, and if you see them, David, I know you edit yours, Tony. Both of you guys, I'm an idiot, but two of you could do a better job than they were doing in 2010 with whatever budget they had on AMC, a regular series, and that says something about where we've come with the technology.
I'll actually tell you that I don't actually edit a lot of my videos. I mean, some of them, but most of my videos are edited with AI. That's how sophisticated it is because it's actually easier for me sometimes to have AI edit it and put the subtitles and all that stuff on it. And it's much faster and a much better ROI for me because then I can get more content out faster. And I mean,
StreamYard does it now, as you know, like when we're done with this, I don't know if you know this, David, they started doing this, testing this, I think, and I've put some of them up as shorts. So they're only shorts so far. They do, but they will grab from this broadcast somewhere either 2 or 3. The most I've ever seen is 4, like 1 minute or less, shorts. And they don't always get it right. Sometimes they grab stuff and you're like, that really wasn't a very interesting moment. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but they do get it right sometimes. And they'll create like a really slick looking short for you.
And it's just one click of the button. And that's the difference. Because I think it kind of, it lowers those barriers for people who duct tape their phone to a stand to stream for 12 hours. It lowers those barriers to where they can actually produce
you need the lower barrier quality to like Elon's toddler level, like wiping his booger on Trump's desk.
Tony, I gotta ask you. I mean, take this a step further. Trump's got a news conference, I guess, coming up this afternoon with the British Prime Minister. Suppose you wanted to do a video, Trump says something stupid, as inevitably he will, and there's a moment, and you want to do a video about that. How do you? What's the program that you use, or what's the AI app, or how do you?
So my process is a little different. I kind of still live in this era of talk radio. I do a 2-hour show, so I try to pack some of those things into my show and to my overall 50,000-foot narrative. That's my goal. And then what we try to do is we cut sections out of that. And if we find something that's really good, then we'll cut a short or something. But a lot of times, I'll even find little clips online, either Aaron Rupar or someone's posting, and I'll take those and I'll pack those in maybe another video. So it's kind of an array of things. I think we live in the Wild West, and
you mean Aaron Rupar, who was on that?
Yes, he was. Aaron
the other
Rupar
day,
was.
Some long like live stream or something.
Yeah, he was on that Substack, groundbreaking, record-breaking Substack with the king of Substack, Cliff Schechter. But
I don't call myself a king of anything now because it sounds a little too much like somebody else. But I
will proclaim you the king of Substack. It's not a monarchy as in taking over democracy. It's just like, edging your way into this streaming platform.
Cliff's edging? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Cliff's edging into.
Well done.
There you go.
That was really bad.
Now I forget even what I was saying. I forget even what I was saying here, and I'm supposed to be a professional.
I'm sorry.
Professional broadcaster. But here's the thing: is that I think in today's age that there is a way for natural talent. Because I wasn't in politics, I wasn't a broadcaster, but I talked for a living. It's what I've done for years, and I've always had the heart for politics, and I've always had a way to articulate it in a way that some people want to hear it articulated. And I think it's interesting where I come from and what I look like and my background to be saying some of the things that I'm saying, how I'm saying them, and I think that's what attracted people to what my content was. So regardless of if I put if I use AI here or I use it here, or I grab this clip here, I grab this clip there, or how I pack it in, I think my talent allows me to do long form content in a way that presents it to people. So I just kind of stay in that lane, and that's what I try to do. And I think a lot of people out there that have talents that can be utilized in media. David, obviously you're a great host. You're a great anchor. So utilizing that is great. Cliff Schechter here is obviously great at duct taping a camera to a
I can duct tape the hell out of a camera for
and
anybody out there who needs
and streaming
it,
for 12 hours. That's what he should be doing. But I'm serious to everyone out there in the audience and everyone out in America, is that we are a consumer economy, and we are kind of whether it's good or bad, we are moving to efficiency. It's not really quality. We're moving to efficiency. And I think it's so efficient to receive media right there on the device that you're carrying around in your pocket at a high quality and a high speed. Now, is it good or bad? It is bad in some ways because we get a lot of disinformation, but I think that's where we come in as to try to provide more information at a faster pace and a louder pace and a more entertaining pace. And I think that will really shake itself loose and really kind of work those kinks out of how new this stuff is, because I think it's really part of everything that people have against social media or technology is it's so young. We don't know where it can go yet. We don't know what it's going to do. And we don't know how society is going to treat this thing in 10 years or 15 years because of our experience with it. So
I'd say, Tony, I think it can be used for good or for evil. And we've seen both.
Absolutely.
Sadly.
Well, the old meme of everyone sitting on a train and they had the newspaper in front of them, right? And no one's talking to each other. No one's conversing. They're all got their head and their face into this newspaper. And they're like, oh my gosh, the world is ruined because everyone is a zombie to the newsmen, to the people who own the ink, and it's the end of the world and we'll never get it back. And, all this hysteria. I think we're going through that some sort of false hysteria now. We're just not sure exactly what the future holds. And that's okay. But we need to find what the future holds by doing it. I think that's
the tools are so amazing. And I look at my 11-year-old daughter who is into editing, and she uses this thing called CapCut, which is some basic sort of editing. And so, about 6 months ago, it was my nephew's birthday. And so I said to my daughter, oh, well, let's all record something and then send it to him as a happy birthday. And she's like, okay, everybody record something and then I'll edit it together, because she loves to edit her own videos. So we all recorded something. We sent her the videos. And within like 10 minutes, she had this like 6-minute hilarious video of all of us, all the different cuts and effects and graphics. And she's doing all this on CapCut. And then we sent it. And I'm like, how do you do this? And she's like, and so the tools.
Did she need a job?
For younger people, and she's a better editor than anybody I know. And she's 11. And so you think about people who grow up with this stuff and have sort of the dexterity and familiarity off the bat, and what they can do to be able to show interesting clips and entertainment stuff and make us all laugh. It is remarkable.
Well, I'll say one more thing, and I've got to go because I speaking of kids, I got to go pick one up. Yep. But my daughter's great at the TikTok and CapCut thing too. But on that same scale, these kids understand even how to edit, movie quality clips. It seems that they understand that they should question everything on this technology too. I think the generations coming that will inherit this great society that we have, I think are going to fully understand that everything on this thing is not true. Everything on this you should question, and you should question it with good reason. And when we, when we get to that point to where those generations are doing that with 95% of the stuff they see, they're not believing everything that is coming across this thing. I think we're going to get ourselves in a situation where we understand this technology a little better, and we really value it, like we used to value newspapers, like we used to value network television, and those things have kind of faded because we have new stuff in front of us and new ways to consume the things and information that we want to consume. So I think that's coming too as well. Not just their ability to edit, but their ability to understand the edits.
I hope so. That's the optimistic sort of way of looking at it, is that we'll get to a generation soon enough, because obviously older generations that don't understand that, were used to what they saw, in the news and had trusted people in the news, and suddenly there's no Walter Cronkite, and we're listening instead to Benny Johnson.
I think there is a new. I think just as there's a new king of Substack, there's a new Walter Cronkite, and that guy's like right down here. Maybe he'll get there. If you team up with the king of Substack here, and you get out there and you're streaming, man.
I know you got to go, but the thing that I still love, and what Cliff is doing with the Substack and what we're all sort of contributing is amazing. But Cliff and I were talking about this. It's like you used to rely on the New York Times or the Washington Post to sort of to read all the news, to keep up on everything, to sort of put things in perspective for you. Now there's so much stuff out there that I feel like we've lost that. Well, where can I go? That one-stop shopping where I can get my column, I can get my sports, my weather, I can get, funny stuff, I can get a joke of the day. And that's where I feel like the beauty of this, Blue Amp Substack is coming through, that Cliff is pulling together literally an all-star lineup of contributors and journalists and people who have interesting things to say, so that instead of having to go to, where can I find Tony Michaels online, or where can I find David Schuster, or where can I find, that you just go to one place and all of it's there, and you can look at it and say, okay, I'm going to click on this, I'm going to click on that, and it's all delivered to your inbox. So you don't have to search through the internet to find this stuff. And so I think it harkens back to that time when you had our sort of newspaper handed to you. Now it's something delivered to your inbox, but hopefully something as qualitative and comprehensive.
Well, I think we always come full circle, and I'm going to come full circle here. David, I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I hope you continue. And Cliff, obviously, the king of Substack. How can I,
and Tony,
I got to bow down to the
Tony, who has the Kaufman Chronicle at Substack,
yes,
which is huge and doing great, and will contribute to mine, and I will contribute to his, and who the hell knows where it all ends up. But together, I think, we know that we were up against a pretty vicious right-wing media. We know we're up against a corporate media that seems to be firing somebody new every day, always somebody that shouldn't have been fired, it seems, for the most part. And so we're watching all of that. If you can get people to a place again, and I hope Substack's the answer. So far, I'm pretty happy with it, where you also have contact with your people. That I've loved doing this because I can see folks' comments in here. And we can go back and forth and interact, and that's what Substack is allowing to. I have people's emails. I can't just be shut down and then how do I reach you? And so we're going to try to. We're forging some new ground. We'll see where the hell it goes, but it's going to be a fun ride. So
it will be, and I'm going to go take a fun ride. I'm going to go get into a pickup line at a school. Thanks, David. Thanks, Cliff.
Tony,
thanks,
great being on with you, my friend. Take care.
Yes, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. We'll see you guys.
Take care, Tony. Mr. Schuster. All right. How are
Cliff,
you?
I'm great. So here's my question. So we whetted the appetite of 80-some thousand people the other day. They now know about Blue Amp, Substack, and the live capability. How often will they get the Blue Amp delivered to their inbox, the columns, the videos? What's next?
Yep. So the plan was, because somebody, and of course it couldn't have been me, the guy that taped a phone together, made a mistake. And initially I was leaving the stream each time and going back in instead of just sort of hitting the X where the individual was and staying in there. So for anybody listening who's on that list, I apologize to you. People got about 4 or 5 emails. So I was like, oh my God, they must hate me now. Let's put David's information up here. Thank you, Jim. You can find David in these wonderful places. And that's all of us. Okay, cool. And so I decided yesterday, having no voice and having harassed people a lot the day before, to sort of chill a little bit and whatever. But today we will have on app right away. We're going to have sort of a wow, I can't believe this happened, and then a broader mission statement that will go out to everybody tomorrow, and that's going to kind of be the kickoff. And we're going to have what we call the blue letter from Blue Amp, which will be regular. If folks have an appetite for it every day, we will get it to them every day. Some of this is the beauty of an interactive relationship is we get to find out what everybody wants. But my plan would be, if we want to fill in and we want to be your news, we want to be able to provide you with everything, as you said. If it's me, I would want to get that the way there's morning newsletters from places. I'd want to be able to send that out and then say, hey, this is really important stuff, and this is what you need to know, right? And then some other interesting stuff, and then we'll have numerous features. I made a joke in the thing I wrote that's going to go up. Is it today? One of the 2 things I wrote going up either today or tomorrow about what we accomplished, which is today, and the broader going forward tomorrow, where I said Sunshine with Schuster, maybe we'll call it. I'm like, I know he's gonna get pissed at me now for doing that. It's a little joke I put, but you know, David Schuster willing, we all have a section, and you know, it'll probably be a couple times a week. You will either have a video or a column. You even said you might want to do one live stream. Fantastic. Now that this live stream was what it was, you know, I'm rethinking things, because I was thinking to myself, you know, I live stream here. There, I was just thinking, you know, I'd write a column. I'd put up some videos I created YouTube, and have a column that I'd write 3 days a week. But now I'm thinking that I may add in, maybe I'll simulcast it with here, or do a separate one there that will strictly be like what I did the other day that seemed to go so well, which is not me, you know, barking as much about what I think, but having on folks like you, so that you know, 2 interesting people a week, or you know, whatever it is. I'm not, no more 12 hours. I don't know that the system can take that, but it's just an hour, you know, even, or something like that, where I get to talk to 2 really interesting people, and we go forward with that. That could be, you know, another feature. So essentially, you know, and I've spoken about other folks. You talked about Tony. You said he'd like to contribute. My friend Tim Fullerton was on yesterday, who's got his own Substack too. You should check out. You know, there will be people that will contribute some of these things. So, I mean, if people want it, and the great thing is you can separate out emails. So some people say, I just want to get this 3 times a week, we can get to that point. If people say, hey, I want that blue letter every day, and can you send the extra feature that day too? Then maybe they get the blue letter, and they get Sunshine with Schuster that day too.
And is there a way, Cliff, I mean, I know people who are watching us now, I think they're seeing us through your YouTube live channel.
YouTube and Twitch, which hello to my Twitch folks. I'm glad to have you too.
Is there a way to merge it all so that something goes out, you know, suppose you take this, it's going out live on YouTube, it's going out live on Twitch. Can it also then go live through a Substack column or posting or whatnot?
So they've told me, yes, to do it that way, they have to give you what is known as, and is you know, sounds like it's guarded, like you know, like we're in Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, right? And you're looking for the Ark of the Covenant, but there's something called a Substack key, a live streaming key. And if they give you that, you are able to merge it in with this. So my goal would be, you know, it could be that I keep doing this many. I do now 3 a week for, you know, up to 2 hours each day, depending on the day. And so maybe that one of those goes to Substack, and it's, instead of it be any of my, you know, my doing a you know, a takedown rant or 2 and that kind of thing. Instead, it's just talking to guests and sort of getting their view on things, you know, and seeing what they've got going on. Because again, I honestly, that's my favorite part of it all, right? Like I could sit here and talk to you about, you know, your time at the University of Michigan. I could talk to you. I have talked to you about. I caught you saying "Go Blue" the other day in your video. I could look at that. See, look at that, man.
Oh, I've got more. I got more. I got this too.
Wow. I don't know. Should I tell them you're betraying them and saying such great things about Indiana to me? I don't know. But because of some potential interest in the family, the University of Indiana, David grew up in Bloomington, beautiful town with a great university. And so, you know, I know something about your background there. I mean, all of that, your background into how you got into to be, I don't even know, you know, like, I'll ask you now, because why the hell not? I've known you forever and I still don't know. Wow. You know, was it in college? Was it before? Like, when did you decide you wanted to be an anchor? These are the things, or at least be on the news. These are the things I find fascinating about people, is how you got here.
To be honest, Cliff, I mean, I didn't have really any intention of it. I was a political science major, but I always, when I was at Michigan, I did some like radio, like sports stuff, and occasionally do some, if there's like a local campus radio station. But I always had this sort of interest in politics and fascination with campaigns. And so I think it was maybe between my sophomore and junior year, I came to Washington, D.C. thinking, oh, I'll get a paid job on Capitol Hill, working for my Congressman Lee Hamilton or somebody like that. And of course, I get to Washington, and there are no paid jobs for college sophomores. You have to do an internship. And so I ended up, you know, and I needed to make some money. So I was like a temp, right? Because I could type really fast. And I went to grocery stores and asked people if they like to try a hot dog, you know, different things like that to make money for the summer.
I
was
waited
so
tables when
scared.
I first went there, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and I was so infuriated that I couldn't get this job on Capitol Hill. I was like, that's it, damn it. I'm not going to go back and work for, Congress again or try to work for. And when I went back to Michigan, one of my friends at the radio station said, well, if you still like politics, but you want to see it from maybe a different perspective, why don't you do an internship at one of the broadcast news organizations or like CNN? They've got a good internship program. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I did a CNN internship in their Washington bureau, and then that turned into a 4-month summer job at CNN, which then turned into, after I graduated, a job at CNN as a producer assignment editor. And then because after the first Gulf War, when so many people took CNN's audio hot because of John Hallman and Bernie Shaw and Peter Arnett live in Baghdad, Ted Turner had this great idea of having a CNN radio news service that he created. And he did that after the Gulf War in 91, but not enough people were sort of filing from CNN correspondents. So they said, okay, anybody who has any radio experience, college, whatever, if you go to a news conference, if you do an interview, if you see something interesting, give us a 35-second radio reader and we'll put it on CNN Radio News. And so I started doing that in addition to what I was doing. And I thought, this is kind of cool to sort of be on the microphone and to sort of be a reporter. And that sort of whet my appetite for, I really want to do on-air reporting full time. And that's what led me to local news, which then led me to Fox News, MSN, and on and on and on. So there you have it.
Were you local news in DC?
I was local news in Arkansas was my first local gig. But funny story,
that's right. You told me, there was something big going on around there at that time, wasn't there?
Well, there was, but this is like, there's always, I feel like there's one moment in everybody's career that sort of clicks and you're thinking, this is it for me. So my first night after I was on this assignment, the first night I was a paid assignment editor at CNN. So this is after the 4 months of internship, after the 4 months of summer work. I started in January of 1990. And the first job on the assignment desk where we sort of coordinate the crews and the information flow and all that kind of stuff. The first, the entry level job was, you're the nighttime assignment editor. You work from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight, and you basically close up the Washington bureau. And those were the days when the last thing that a nighttime assignment editor had to do was wait for the Bulldog edition of the Washington Post, which would come out, the next day's newspaper would come out at 11 o'clock that night. And then I would have to cut it up into pieces, like the top 6 or 7 stories, and fax it. Remember fax machines? I would fax it to the Atlanta headquarters.
They never worked for me, so I kind of...
management who came in early in the morning, they knew what the Washington Post was reporting instead of the agenda. So that was like the first job that I was supposed to do. Well, that very first night, I'm waiting around for the Bulldog edition of the Washington Post. I'm the only one that's left in the bureau. And I'd said to one of my bosses, well, what happens if there's news that breaks? They said, somebody will just come back in and help you. And part of the job was to, get the crews, send them home. Also, I get a phone call from one of the camera crews that was at CNN. And he calls up, he says, is there something going on? It looks like WRC, the NBC affiliate's about to do a live shot from the FBI building. And I look on my sheet of all the different assignments that the photographers had that day and that night. I didn't see anything. And I thought, that's kind of weird. All right, thanks for the heads up. I'll call the FBI. I call the public information officer at the FBI. I said, this is David Schuster at CNN. Is there something going on that CNN should know about? And the guy says, I'm sorry, I can't comment. I think that's really weird. And then 5 minutes later, I get a phone call from CNN's affiliate station in Washington, WTTG, the Fox station. Their nighttime senator is like out of breath, calls me. He's like, who's this? I said, this is David Schuster. And he's like, who? And I said, David Schuster. It's my first job, my first night alone on the CNN assignment desk. He says, well, David, welcome to Washington. Marion Barry has just been caught smoking crack. And within 30 seconds, NBC then breaks into LA law. They're the reporters at the FBI. That's the report. WTTG is freaking out because they're trying to keep up. They're wanting to know who's this, new guy on the assignment desk at CNN who doesn't know anything. And I'm like, what the hell do I do? So I started calling people, and I knew enough to call one of the correspondents who was near the Washington bureau. I got to come in, and everybody comes sort of streaming back in. And then it's like by midnight. And they hand me a radio. They hand me like one of these bulky old cell phones. And I'm still in my mom's car packed with all my stuff because I was living on, I think at the time, I was like in Dan Gross's apartment on the floors where I was.
And I know Dan too, because in that weird world, my parents and his parents are friends. So I've known Dan.
And so I go to Marion Barry's house at 2 a.m, packed with my mom's car with all my stuff. And I'm shouting, Mr. Mayor, what were you doing at the hotel? As he walks in with his, lawyer, and he's wearing his tracksuit. And I'm like, this is awesome. So that's how I knew I was took. First night of the job at CNN. And it was 4 years later when I went to Little Rock, Arkansas to be a reporter and cover Whitewater and all that kind of weird stuff. So
I was going to say, okay, so was the stuff already going on in Arkansas, or do you happen to be
Yeah.
there?
So
Yeah, okay, that wasn't a coincidence.
Growing up, I always had this sort of weird fascination with white collar fraud and crime and all that kind of stuff, and read all the crime books. So when I go to Arkansas as a reporter, Ken Starr had just been named the independent counsel, replacing this guy, Bob Fisk. Bob Fisk was the original special counsel investigating the Clintons over Whitewater. He got bounced. Ken Starr was named independent counsel. And I arrived in Little Rock a couple months later, and I'm thinking, and I see all these stories about people going to the grand jury. And so I said to the news director, I said, I think the people who are going to the grand jury, it looks like they're going to indict Governor Jim Guy Tucker and maybe the Clinton business partners. This is going somewhere. And the news director laughs. He's like, you're new to Arkansas. Well, I'll tell you what, Schuster, you cover the courthouse. If you find anything interesting that you want to report on the air, you go for it. You can do whatever you want. It's really not going to go.
Yeah, you were meant to make it, David, because you ended up in all the right places where people are like, oh, the new guy.
Well, then within another
put him there, nothing's going to happen.
Within the first 3 or 4 months of being a local news reporter in Arkansas, Webb Hubbell, who was Clinton's deputy attorney general, he got busted at the Rose Law Firm for overbilling clients. And by the way, the Rose Law Firm was right across the street from the KATV studios. So all I had to do to report on the Rose Law Firm live at 5, 6, and 11 was we'd take a big giant HMI light on the street, we'd shine up the side of the Rose Law Firm, and I would stand there talking about the latest corruption, which drove them crazy. So there was the Webb Hubbell
Isn't that
story.
Where, and this isn't a connecting her to the story, but that's where Hillary was a lawyer.
That's where Hillary
too.
was. That's right. And so then within a couple months of that, then Jim Guy Tucker, the governor, got indicted on a cable deal. Then he got indicted again with McDougal's. And the Whitewater story just sort of took off. And so after 2 years of covering this stuff, this takes us to 96, Fox News, MSNBC were starting in the fall of 96 to compete against CNN. And so I sent, my tapes and called them both and said, hey, if you're going to actually compete with CNN, you should have somebody who knows this arcane Whitewater stuff, because there's a decent chance that Hillary Clinton's going to get indicted. That got the attention, of course, of Roger Ailes at Fox News, who's like, what? She's going to get indicted? Tell me how. And so there were conversations with him. He's like, all right, come to Washington. You're a correspondent for Fox News in Washington in 96. If it goes anywhere, it's all yours. And within a year and a half of being at Fox, the Monica Lewinsky scandal breaks. And because I had covered all of Ken Starr's prosecutors in Arkansas, I had remarkable contacts and sources for that part of the investigation, which kept Fox competitive with CNN and NBC and all that. So that sort of took me through.
What was Fox like at that point? Were they already... Obviously, I started going on there in the later, like about 4 or 5 years after that, as like a guest who would debate with people and that kind of thing. And it already, to me, in the early 2000s, had a Pravda-esque feel. When I'd walk in their hallways, I felt like I was leaving the United States. I'm quite serious. Like, I don't know. To me, that
I think it really changed with Fox. I mean, I thought when I got there, great. A cable news channel that's willing to stick it to a sitting administration. They would go hard at the Clintons. We could go hard at Republicans in Congress. It was kind of a weird place. They had like a regular show called Fox on Pets, which was dedicated to the food. I mean, it was clearly they were trying to be very creative with different stuff. And it was sort of like a fun place to be. I think the real change for Fox came with the 2000 Florida recount. That's when, and they've been on the air at that point 3.5 years. That's when I really felt sort of the thumb on the scale for George W. Bush against Al Gore. And I started to think, okay, this is not going to be a good place for me. And then after 9/11, the blatant sort of, everybody must wear a flag lapel pin. And I got in trouble because I said, oh yeah, well, my flag is on the inside of my suit jacket that's made in the United States. It says Union of Needlepoint Industrial Textile Employees. That means that my jacket was made in the United States. Here's my flag. Where was your jacket made, Britt Hume? And he didn't find that very funny. So it sort of became clear that Fox.
And then Britt Hume did this, if I can do an impression. I mean, my God, that guy and has been growling about things for I don't know how long.
Between, I think the Florida recount and then 9/11, that's where I think Fox really went off the rails. And then I was gone in early 2002. And so,
I think they intended, it's so funny, all of our histories, no pun intended here, but, I was doing PhD history work and doing some research for a professor. And so I was looking back at sort of some of the rise, I was studying for my piece, the rise of the right, in the second half of the 20th century. And so I think it was about Murdoch was the kind of conservative, and he's proven obviously he cares about nothing but money and News Corp and whatever, but was the kind of conservative, much more libertarian, stay out of my, let me get rich and cut my regulations, and I don't care what the hell happens. I should be able to shape the narrative and this and that and the other thing. It's not to say I'm defending him. He's a horrible human being, but that was what motivated him originally. And so I actually found this old, which I photocopied some of this stuff. I did, but for the professor, not for myself, this old thing where he had actually met and started talking about in the mid to late 80s with Reagan and Reagan's people about starting a channel that would be, but he wasn't, they weren't even talking about it as something like what it is today, far right, insane. It was more of the pro business, more like if what the Powell memo, which I'm sure you do, was, and whatever, where that, it was much more of a, we need something that's more pro business and pro, and that's kind of how he made his argument. And by 96, they were on the air. But Roger Ailes was always a culture warrior from Northeast Ohio, very working class part of Northeast Warren, Ohio. And, went to OU here, which is actually, they shouldn't be tied to him because it's one of the best, one of the best broadcasting programs, their news program in the country, Ohio University. And he, but then he took that chip on his shoulder and a lot of apparently, from what we learned, criminal activity, and went to Washington and or New York and helped turn Fox into the garbage it became.
Cliff, you put me on the spot a little bit about when Fox turned. I'm going to put you on the spot now because I know you're a connoisseur of all things cable news and media. When do you think CNN lost both its way and sort of lost its competitive edge, and what was the reason?
Interesting. First of all, I think CNN likely screwed up the entire news industry, not on purpose. When Ted Turner created this 24-hour news channel, I think it was an innovation, right? It was you don't have to wait to the watch in the morning or wait to the nightly news or listen on the radio. Yes, folks, that used to happen, not just when you're in your car. People would listen to radios at home to get news. But we're going to give it to you at any point. The problem is there isn't always a Gulf War going on. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of space to fill. And when you have a lot of space to fill and your whole purpose isn't to be the extra part of a network that theoretically doesn't care as much if you make profits, but your whole purpose is to profit from news, I think right away that was a bad trend that started setting us back. And I don't think Ted Turner meant it that way, but it doesn't really matter, does it? That's where it started. Overall, look, I mean, now looking back on it, I don't think I thought it at the time. Crossfire was ridiculous. It was everything Jon Stewart said when he went on there and said that. I mean, it was Crossfire was which I think was developed out of, what was that crazy guy, Morton Downey Jr. The fact that he sort of had a half news, pretended it was sort of news, sort of whatever. Remember he he drew a swastika on his own head and claimed he was attacked by neo-Nazis. And I think they saw that kind of stuff, at least from stuff that I've read, and said, you know what, we can turn this into like people like the conflict. To the point, I remember reading this anecdote about the senator from New York who I hated at the time, Alphonse D'Amato, probably the last Republican senator from New York, who apparently during one of the debates in Crossfire actually turned to the hosts or turned to the producers or hosts or whatever, was like, am I yelling enough or do you need more? And when you're getting to that point, and so I would argue now that the Crossfire era started undermining news right away because it took politics as a game. It made it into a he said, she said. It literally created both sides fighting as an art form, performance art, maybe. And so in the end, we had a good debate. No, debates are supposed to be had on about real issues. And there is supposed to be a winner and a loser on points because I'm right and you're wrong theoretically, or you're right and I'm wrong. It wasn't about that, right? It could be whoever was the most entertaining and interesting and yelled the most and, whatever. And so I think that's where it started. But I honestly think when CNN became, what was the guy's name who they brought in and turned everything right wing?
Zucker?
Chris, somebody or other, like
the
guy.
Chris Lick a couple of years ago, and before that, Jeff Zucker.
I think, yes, I haven't watched, I'll be on cable news for years, but I think there were some positive aspects of it. I even believe that I saw you somewhere. Tell me if I'm wrong. If it wasn't, no, it wasn't you actually. So I take it back. It was somebody that you know well and are friendly with, but it wasn't you. was very critical of Jake Tapper, who now has this book coming out apparently with Alex Thompson, who I think is a clown, on Biden and how selfish Biden. I mean, to be coming out with that right now, I would say to Jake Tapper, have you ever questioned your career choices? Because he started off, somebody who worked at the Brady campaign. Okay. He started off as somebody who clearly, even if he wasn't liberal, was reasonable. And now, I mean, to be putting something out like going after Biden right now because you think it'll sell, like that's where you are. And so I think Jake Tapper and I think Anderson Cooper and I think some of these people were actually were better reporters, if not perfect. I think cable news has been on a downward slide for a while because they've had to compete with Fox, who's been willing to do anything for ratings. Yeah. So that led them to. But I think Chris Lick just boom. I think the whole thing fell apart. And I think the outlet, with the exception of maybe a Jim Acosta here or there, has been completely useless for however many years, 3, 4, 5, longer than that would be my take.
Well, speaking of Jake Tapper, I mean, to me, it gets to, I mean, I think once upon a time at CNN and at some of the cable networks and broadcast channels, there was a management or editor who would say, no, you're not going to do this. I mean, if Jake, given the way the media got criticized for, not covering Biden as perhaps aggressively as they should have, it feels like what Jake Tapper is sort of engaging now is a sort of a do-over, saying, oh, well, now I have all this reporting about the cover-up of Joe Biden, therefore I'm on the right side of the story, when he's going to get crucified by Republicans because he lashed out at Lara Trump and a bunch of people for criticizing Joe Biden's cognitive decline. So no, Jake Tapper looks like a hypocrite. I think he's getting blasted rightfully by Democrats who say maybe this isn't the time to sort of be picking over Joe Biden. But the idea that a cable news reporter would suddenly say, oh, I've got all this amazing reporting when he could have done the reporting for the last several years. And I think in the old days, my sense is that somebody in management at a CNN or an NBC News would have said, no, you're not going to have anything to do with this book. You want to promote the book when it comes out from somebody else? That's fine. But you're not going to have your name on the book because you're going to get slammed.
Right. And that it was too important, right? Right. Like you're an anchor. You're supposed to be above that. You're supposed to have gravitas. Right. You're putting your name on this. I mean, all Alex Thompson did during this past election, because he was writing a Biden book, he was so biased. He was so full of crap. I mean, he's such an obvious clown. And again, I've talked about this before. I love how Tony talks about, he can talk about working class folks from the Ozarks because he has this background, and this is a background that's been missing from news for a long time. There used to be a lot of, I've talked about how I had a neighbor who's this great, reporter who's this kind of working class guy who was at the Cincinnati Enquirer and was a lifetime reporter. And he came from that background. So he understood regular people in a way that's, now I feel like the sad thing is I almost have to do the translating because a couple of the obnoxious, I shouldn't say it that way, but I went to a couple of schools that were, more whatever. And I know some of these people, like I went to school with them, and that they're coming out and I know who they are. I talk to them behind the scenes and they're such frauds. They're sitting there. It's all about careerism. It's all about, how do I rise up? How do I get my book deal? How do I get myself on cable news the most? It's all the wrong incentives, from these people that are doing this stuff, and they have no understanding of what regular people are going through. They never had any understanding of what regular people are going through. Yeah. And the worst part about that is they don't care, because if they did care, they wouldn't be chasing all of this garbage. They'd be doing their jobs instead of coming out to Ohio to talk to some Nazi who supported Trump, in a diner in Dayton, like they were doing, like they were doing like a Jane Goodall and all of us out here, like we were primates and they had to come learn what happened. Maybe they could have come out to Ohio to talk to folks who were because of laws that that Republicans passed, and some Democrats joined with them, and they should take the blame too. Their factory had just left the town and they had no job. Maybe they should have talked to some of them about what they felt about that now. Or maybe they should have talked about some folks who had looked at after certain Republican budgets cut their Medicaid. Maybe they could have come and talked to some white folks, but also how about, some people of color in Ohio. I know that doesn't fit their narrative, but they do exist here in large numbers, and spoke to them about what it was like to get their Medicaid cut. And again, white folks, people of color, men, women, just a large variety, and say, how is this hurting the heartland when we cut key social programs, as opposed to the way they looked at it, which was, where can we find angry white men who love Trump, and kind of thing. And so they start putting their finger on the scale and acting like just such know-nothing idiots, and with just 100% stereotypes in their heads, which I know are there because I grew up with them. Flyover country, right? There's the East Coast, and there's Chicago, and then there's the West Coast. You know what I mean? And like, you can just see the condescending arrogance in those go to a diner in Ohio, Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana, whatever type pieces. And it's like, you guys, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're not doing a service to people here in the slightest. You could actually go to a few hours outside of New York City and find those same diners, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's
God,
much
Long
more.
Island has got...
Right. It's much more by county now that you live in, an area you live in, than it is, we just happen to count electoral votes the way we do, which is stupid anyhow. So they've given people just, everybody in Ohio is like this, everybody in New York is like this, which is just not true. They haven't given people the full kind of version of reality. They've screwed up people's realities, and they don't care to fix it. Because again, it's about ratings for the guys at the top, and for the people that are trying to make their way up. Most of them, there are exceptions to this, but to most of them, it seems to simply be, in the political parts anyhow, about getting a book and moving up to a higher station, or otherwise you would cover the truth and you'd tell people what is going on.
Right.
I'll say it one more time, and I'll kick it back to you. It's like the metaphor I use is, why don't we use something that you can get into here, David, which is, Michigan played Ohio in the big game. Now, Michigan scored more points, so they're claiming they won. But Ohio State gained more yards, so they're saying they won. We're going to talk to both sides and see what both sides think. That's the way they cover politics these days. And
look, for example, there was the vote the other night, right? The budget resolution, the budget blueprint, and so much of the mainstream media was on the drama of voter whiplash. Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump twist enough arms to win a vote. And I'm thinking, well, that's one way to cover it. The other way you could cover it is the way our friend Jonathan Larson had in his headline, which says, Trump Johnson vote to cut hospitals, cut nursing programs, cut Medicaid, cut food assistance to the kids, because that's what this was about. And so,
and by the way, he was a guest too the other day. You should go follow his Substack. But go ahead.
I mean, it's very safe to sort of do the who won, who lost, and what was the vote count, and the drama, because the Washington media didn't know what was going to happen. And so because they didn't know what was going to happen, when something happened, that's news, as opposed to, well, maybe the news is actually how this bill, if it really goes forward, is going to affect tens of millions of people.
Maybe talk to somebody who needs that hospital and how that's going to affect them. Maybe that's the news here, and that's what they all seem to have lost, which is, I think there was a period of time where they kind of did both. Yeah. Maybe that was starting in the 90s. Maybe it was, or I don't know, when cable started coming up, and where maybe it was the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Maybe it already had gone by the wayside then. But in recent years, it seems like that's not even a consideration.
Right.
How many people? I mean, you see these headlines, and it's like there's nothing about how many people.
Hi, Anna.
Hurt.
Sorry, Cliff. I was just saying hi to my our babysitters here. Hello, Anna.
Oh, cool.
That's okay.
Nope. You need to. Hey, we're all good, man. If I there are a couple of times I think where I had to do this at home, or when I would go on somebody's show that was later at night, I've been on John Fugel saying he's got a radio show at on Sirius at night, and I have one of my cats jump up on my lap, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
so be it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of likes it. It's sort of adds to realism, maybe going back to sort of COVID when we were having to do everything from our home studios and whatnot. And whether it's the kids or the dogs or the babysitter or the wife coming down and yelling at me while I'm on live on some show. I mean, that's
awesome.
Real life.
That's actually, I know, and it's authentic because we don't have to put on airs and pretend that I think in a way, again, it doesn't mean that you and I, it doesn't mean I'm claiming I'm working class, but it does mean at least you're getting I'm giving you a real view of my life, and I'm getting, hopefully I'll learn through our interactions a real view of yours instead of like the pretending that everything's okay that goes on, with a lot of the news today. And again, by ignoring the impact of some of these decisions and how they hurt people. I mean, maybe they should have talked to some people when Trump and Musk decided that the guys watching the nuclear weapons weren't needed anymore, and maybe beyond the story of how utterly idiotic that was. And it also came out yesterday. It used the word briefly, but we don't know how long that briefly means. They let the people who watch Ebola go, because that's something you don't want to track. You definitely don't want to track Ebola. Just let it be out there. I'm sure it'll all work out fine.
Never mind the people who watch Ebola, but I mean, they've already damaged the infrastructure at the CDC and all these government agencies that would help figure out, okay, how are we going to set up screening systems for all these flights from Africa, and how are we going to track the information? Those are all people who've already been fired. So yeah, you're trying to bring back, we made a mistake about the people who actually are experts on Ebola. We're bringing them back. But what about the rest of the healthcare infrastructure that the government essentially controls to make sure that we have information, that we set up screening so that we keep this thing isolated? Those people are gone. So whatever Elon Musk wants to say, it was just a brief mistake. No, it wasn't just a brief mistake. You have torpedoed the ability of this country to stop Ebola if one of these people gets on a plane and comes to the United States. Well done.
Which is insane, right? I mean, and again, when you create enough probabilities, when, even if probabilities of certain things happening go up only by a couple percent, well, you do that with enough dangerous, you do that with regulations around buildings that could collapse, and you do that around flights, and you do that around diseases, viruses, the contagions, and you do that around people that will help during a natural disaster, and go on and on and on. One of those probabilities is going to happen, if not many of them. And that's the thing. Like, I've tried here to talk a lot, and I know I talked about it on at some point during the 12-hour thing the other day. I tried to talk about where our because they bring history and context to this, which again is something media just so often fails at, that there was a time where we were that kind of country. It pretty much preceded the 20th century. It's the reason why in the first 10 years there, and I always forget, is it 1903 or 1906, but Teddy Roosevelt creates the FDA, because just being poisoned for no reason or dying from food just seems like a bad idea. So maybe we should create this class of bureaucratic professionals, honorable people who care about your health, who are knowledgeable and want to come in and work on that. And then we create an income tax, because maybe we shouldn't have the kind of inequality, where Justice, Brandeis, who said, you can either have a vast disparities in wealth or democracy. You can't have both, because he understands what happens when a few people like Elon Musk out there control what they do. And you start creating these various other government agencies to regulate, eventually roads, and to regulate buildings and all these things, because you understand that's what a modern society and a modern economy does. That you don't just choose to say, hey, we can save a little money by cutting a little bit here and there, even if we just let people die and let people get injured. We're trying to help, the people in our society by creating these vast organizations filled with hardworking professionals, not people the way, a greedy schlub like Elon, tries to talk about them. That's him. He's somebody who just cares about himself, his ego, his profits, his pathetic uncle jokes, and the rest. There are people who go into these jobs every day they have fired that care about their specific area of knowledge, who could be making more money probably in the private sector, but have chosen to do this because this is their passion. Yeah. And that's everything they're destroying right now. Some, the courts are stopping them. Others, the courts haven't been able to. Yeah.
Well, I gotta drop in 2 more minutes, but I'll leave you with this, and that is, I was struck along that sort of line about sort of how haphazard the government firings have been. The other day, I guess, when Elon Musk suggested that people who responded to his email about tell me 5 things you accomplished last week, he said the people who responded, those should be the government workers who get promoted. And I'm thinking, wait a second, is that the way we wanted to determine who is going to be the next person in charge of tracking the next hazardous waste spill or the next pandemic or inspecting your aircraft wing? Do we really want to base it on whether somebody responded to Elon Musk's email, that's the criteria for whether somebody gets a promotion in government? That's insane. But that's how narcissistic he and Trump have become, that the only thing that matters to them is fealty to Trump and fealty to Musk. And the idea that people actually are experts and are helping provide government services that are valuable to our society, that seems irrelevant to Musk and Trump.
You know, if you'll allow me, I'd like to ask you one more question. And this is not in your area of expertise or mine. I don't believe either of us are psychiatrists or psychologists. But, you know, Trump has always been like this. Musk was somebody who voted for and supported Democrats, who he didn't speak out about it a lot that I'm aware of, but he did. He was on, you can find old fundraisers where you'll find his name on a list for Obama, for Hillary, for this kind of stuff. Do you know? I mean, I don't think he ever was a good person. I think the apartheid upbringing and the emerald mine money that he took, and he obviously grabbed other people's ideas and grabbed government subsidies where he could. And it seems like he was always terrible to workers. So don't get me wrong. I don't feel like he was ever a good person. And his dad has told us that his dad seems like the greatest guy in the world, that he was picked on in school and basically all the other kids hated him. So it seems like he's always been a jerk. But being an outward right-wing lunatic and being so, I don't know how else to say it, but stupid to believe the things that come out of his mouth, you have to be, you really have to be mentally addled. Some people have tossed around the ketamine thing. Some people have tossed around, maybe there was a breakdown there somewhere. I mean, and again, if you don't want to speculate on this, you don't have to, but do you have any sense of how this guy went from somebody who was a jerk, but like a jerk in the industries he worked in and just went about being a jerk in his private life, to like this sort of megalomaniacal, insane person?
I think it's a good question and something to sort of think about, because there are so many people who do make a ton of money who may also be, say, on the autism scale or have a certain addiction to a certain kind of drugs who don't go the direction that Elon Musk did. I almost wonder, Cliff, is, you know, when you become the sort of wealthiest person in the world, well, what else is there? I mean, there's only so many private planes and places you can visit and adoration that you can get. So now it's sort of like, okay, a couple of years ago, he buys Twitter and suddenly he becomes the largest voice in the world. And he sort of gets addicted to that. And then he realizes, oh, well, I can accomplish two things by sucking up to Donald Trump and helping him get elected. I can both help my businesses because I can, all the regulatory stuff, I can ease that off of them. And then maybe I can also be a power broker. I can be like Donald Trump's idiot savant who helps him with things. And I think Elon Musk got used to sort of being around Trump, but was intoxicated by the power and intoxicated by the adulation he was getting from Trump, the most, whether we liked it or not, the most powerful person in the world. So now all of a sudden Elon Musk is like, oh, I can do something for you, Donald Trump. I'm great at managing businesses and figuring out how to make things work more efficiently. I'll help you find $2 trillion in savings. And Trump is like so stupid anyway, because, well, why would you find,
he doesn't know how any of that stuff works,
be in charge of savings who doesn't know the first thing about how our democracy or our constitution works? And he doesn't obviously know how the government works. And now we're handing it to, so I just think Elon Musk became so addicted to the power, to the access, to the attention, to the constant media stories about him, that this is something money can't buy for him, and he's got it. And the only question is, how much damage does he inflict on the rest of us for his little joyride?
Cynthia Rice here often contributes here, said that that Musk is addicted to attention, and I think maybe he didn't know how much he needed adulation and attention. It seems Donald Trump's always known that he needs it desperately. Yeah. And maybe when he started getting some of that, but then he also started getting some of the criticism, which, by the way, it you know, as we all know, comes with the territory. I don't know where you are. I always give people that sliding scale for me of when I first wrote the book on McCain in 2008, it was my first experience with kind of getting any kind of national coverage. I'd gone on Fox and MSNBC, I believe, by then, but it wasn't the same thing as what happened then on the Daily Show and stuff like that. And people started attacking me personally. And I always say I went through, it was like 3 phases. first I was like a little hurt. I'm like, my gosh, wow, that's nasty. My second phase was not caring at all and just kind of like, okay. My third phase was actually finding it objectively funny, that I don't think the people that try to come and torment me get that I keep most of their insults and kind of laugh at them now. I don't know that but maybe there are people that can't reach that, even the second phase of that. And I think maybe that once Musk was being talked about more and he was opening his mouth more, that so much of the response was negative that maybe that radicalized him, that he started just becoming, a misanthrope and hating people because so much of what flew his way, he couldn't handle. I don't know.
I feel like, there's an epic crash that's eventually coming, right? Because his approval ratings are even lower than Donald Trump's. And the last thing Donald Trump wants to be associated with are, people who Trump considers losers. And at a certain point when Trump, can't get a lot of this stuff done because the courts have blocked it and Trump doesn't really have anything to show for it, I think then Trump pivots to, well, it's Elon Musk's fault that this didn't work. And then they have their sort of divide and Musk goes away and that's it. But I sort of feel like, well, Donald Trump.
I think he already would have if it weren't for the money, and the close relations with China and whatever. That's the only thing that can help Musk, because you're right. Otherwise, everybody gets dumped by Trump and gets blamed who fails. So Musk better hope that, because I would say we're certainly seeing Jeff Bezos try to compete for being as big an a-hole as Musk is now. Yeah. He's doing his best to really try to rise. Even those pictures he's taken with the new lady. I'm sorry. And so people know I'm not being sexist. I'm talking about both of them. Give me a break. Like they looks like these two gauche losers who are like who think they're professional models. It's something out of like a Ben Stiller movie. It is just like you're and so now we get rid of the whole the opinion section apparently. So you better hope that Bezos isn't successful at kissing Trump's butt better, Musk. So he decides he doesn't need you. I think I'll just end with, if you end up with that much money, don't be a Jeff Bezos, be a Mackenzie Bezos.
Right. Right.
That's what you should be, because think of all you can do with that money to help people.
Elon Musk, he could have given $5,000, he could have given $50,000 to every single person who lost their home in the California wildfires, and he would still be worth $300 billion. It's there's so much money that he has that it could be done for good. Anyway, Cuff, I'm going to run. You enjoy the rest of your show.
You're awesome. I'll tell people again where to find you and all that. But you're looking at one of the best.
Blue Amp Substack is all people need to know.
You're very kind, and you're you. You know how I feel about you. Thanks, you so
Cliff.
much.
We'll be in touch, buddy. Take care.
Yep. So I'm going to tell you guys something that you don't know maybe about David, and why he is legitimately one of the most terrific people. I talked about it the other day on if you were watching the live stream on Substack, you would have seen it, but I know some of you weren't there. So just so you know, that my rule has always been, and not always, there have to be exceptions to this, because sometimes people have done important things, and I may not think they're the most wonderful people off camera, but I need to talk to them. But my rule is to always try to have people who are the same people off camera as they are on, just as good people. And so back in 2012, 13, my father was passing away, and I grew up in New York City, where at the time David was living. And I'll say quickly to Dr. Kev's gal, Cliff's Edge is your Substack free. It is. There were going to be some added pay stuff for extra, certainly for some of the extra work that David does, because David's not going to just come over there for free. He needs to get paid, right? Whatever. But the basic stuff that you will get every day, the vast majority of the content will be free. So yes, please go sign up, blueamp.substack.com, and you can sign up as a free subscriber, which most are. And so I had to go to this certain hospital. I was going to visit my dad, and it was in the neighborhood that David lived in. And David just told you, we started becoming friends around 2010 or so when I started going on this show. So at this point, I've known David for only 2 years or so. And I was at the hospital, I flew back to New York, spent about a week there. I was at the hospital every day. And I would tell you, besides one other friend of mine, who I also will always, appreciate because of this, who is a doctor at the hospital there, who would come in and see me every day there. The only other person who came by, I swear to you, every day was David Schuster, who at that point had been my friend, as I said, for maybe 2 years, 3 years at most, because that's the kind of guy he is. And those are the kinds of friends I would say to all of you, or partners, spouses, if you're lucky, family members, which you don't choose, that you want in your life, and it's even hard for me not to tear up a little bit now because I'm thinking about my dad. But David was there for me every day, and that's something that you never can replace. You can never take away. And that's why I was always hoping that I would get a chance to work with him in some capacity. And I'm still hoping that this Substack thing goes forward in the manner in which it looks like after the big day that we had, because it would give me a chance to do that, and that would just be incredible. But yeah, I mean, as we said earlier, I'll repeat it. We more than doubled the number of views they'd gotten in any kind of a live stream video format. We were told that we brought more people, new people, as members, as subscribers to Substack than had ever happened before in one day, and I'm still trying to process that. That is outrageous. And again, I had I'm sorry, guys. I'm wearing my Reds hat now because they're my second favorite team, being here in 12, 13, 14 years in Cincinnati. But I grew up, and this is something I did with my dad. So it reminds me, as a Yankees fan in New York. So I'll use the metaphor, murderer's row, as they used to call it, of the 1927 Yankees lineup. I had a murderer's row lineup of people that I could never thank enough that said yes, and some of them are people that I've had debates with and disagreements with publicly. I don't even agree with on everything. Mehdi Hassan is somebody who I've disagreed publicly with on some things, and we agree on some other stuff. For him he came on, which was incredible, of him to do. The number of people who are just reporters. I mean, a real reporter like Brian Karam, real comedian like a Hal Sparks, who has me on the show every week. I mean, I want to make sure some of the folks I haven't even mentioned as much, but Matt McNeil's a radio host, in Minnesota and Chicago and Seattle, who's an incredible guy. Tim Fullerton, who worked for the Obama administration, digital guy, you can find him also on Substack, who came in and filled in and joined me, is an incredible guy. Ran digital for their interior department, among other things he's done. For Everytown for Gun Safety, where I met him, he ran the digital operation because I was doing the digital PR operation. There just were some. Matt Robeson, who contributes to my YouTube and writes a column every week in Newsweek. We co-wrote a column there to promote what we're doing at Substack. And you're going to say to me, well, Newsweek's very conservative. And I'm going to say to you, yes, it is. And we need to reach people where they are. So there are some people reading Newsweek that aren't already with us. We can convince them we should do that. And some have also brought that up about Substack, that they don't censor anybody on. But I'll tell you, it's very different from my perspective than a Twitter, where Elon Musk, not only are you not able to monetize, not only are you not able to see control all the data, are you not able to reach out to your own folks and make sure you stay in touch with them by getting their emails. But the difference is that at Substack, they want the way the system is set up is for you to grow and reach your people. Are there some very right-wing people on there? Absolutely. I never see anything by them. It's not like Musk, who's like, yes, all the conservatives are going to get their stuff shared 50 times more often. And even your people following you who are liberal are never going to see the stuff you do, which, by the way, I'm streaming to Twitter right now. So I love saying this stuff. It's one of the few things I still do to Twitter. I stream there and drop videos there. Don't do anything else. But that's kind of that's to me why Substack is so important. there aren't nearly as many righties who've been going there lately. It's been more like Jim Acosta going there, Beto O'Rourke going there, people like that. And why has that been? That's been because we don't have the infrastructure of the right. A lot of them don't need to go there because they've got billions of dollars of infrastructure and just go do whatever the hell they want, and the right will support them. We don't have that, and this provides us that infrastructure. So, no, I'm never going to agree with anybody 100%. But overall, I love what Substack's doing. I love what they're allowing us to do. So that's really important. So there we are. What else we got? I'd come in here originally because I told you I was going to tell you about Jasmine Crockett. I will tell you, I'm quickly, and thank you. There's some people in there saying some really, some kind things, which I appreciate. We'll put you up there, Tim. I appreciate any sort of, support like that. But I was going to tell you about some of the stuff that Jasmine Crockett did. So instead of doing this in sort of takedown style, I'm just going to read you some of the comments because I'll be honest with you, it's 2 days later and I am still losing my steam right now. 12 hours took something out of me, and I fell asleep last night early and slept about 11 hours, and yet. So what'd you say, Jim? My chat function for the live stream Tuesday was messing up. I could still see you and you should see your comments. I just couldn't see my comments. That's interesting. I don't know what was going wrong. It should be that I had it on any subscriber of mine could comment. So it wasn't just the paid subscribers. It was all of them could comment. So you should have been able to comment and see what you were saying and all that. That should work. So I don't know. I'm not sure what happened there. But Jasmine Crockett on CNN. We have a white supremacist sitting in the White House. We have a racist. Do you want to know who 80% of the criminals are? You don't need to trust me. You can Google it. You'll see they're white supremacists and racists. That was her way of calling Trump a white supremacist, a racist, and a criminal, all in the same sentence. She said, I had to work 10 times as hard as I had to work to get here in Congress. 10 times, people like me have to work, and she's telling the truth here, obviously, 10 times harder. You think Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert had to work that hard? Of course not. And of course, I don't know that either of them are smart enough to know how to work. But her best quote of all, Marjorie Taylor Greene, was, she's like, it's funny, Marjorie Taylor Greene, now that we've got Elon Musk running around, nobody elected him. She's got an interest in efficiency. She wants to work with him on efficiency. She's like, it's funny. I never heard before this Congress her talking about efficiency at all. Didn't have an interest in it in any way. In fact, she's like, here's your killer line. She's like, the only thing I remember spending her a lot of time on in the 118th Congress was somebody's junk. That she had lots of time for. Yeah. She went at her for Hunter Biden's junk. And she said it in a much better, tougher voice than I did. She's like, but now we've got a committee being run by an oligarch because all of you are owned by Elon Musk. So now you're interested in efficiency. I guess you go from being interested in Hunter Biden's junk to efficiency when you've got a billionaire who is either paying you off, which I have zero evidence of, so I don't know, just to be clear. But I bet he'll be making campaign contributions. I bet if he hasn't made them already, and running independent ads, not that Marge needs them because she's like in a plus 25 mouth breather district. So, the goons in her district, like, honestly, she could sort of just be a large sort of puddle of sewage and speak with lips, speaking out loud, and 3 toes, of course, speaking out loud and saying the racist and fun things she says, and trying to dodge being zapped by Jewish lasers, of course. And Elon Musk would still make sure to give her money and support her, because why not? And that district, of course, would still vote for her because they're brainwashed now, and we need to do something about this information. And Elon Musk is the main purveyor of that in this country, even more so, I would argue, than Donald Trump. In any case, it's good to know that Jasmine Crockett is living inside of rent-free inside their brains constantly. They blow their spadoinkles over her constantly. Young, attractive, Black, brilliant lawyer, worked her ass off to get where she is, and no, will not bow down and shut up when this group of monkeys' feces are talking. She won't just accept what they say. She's been fantastic. And the courage it takes when you're who she is and the threats that I'm sure are made against her daily, God knows what the threats are from all of their allies, all of their criminal friends that they released, 1,500 of them from January 6th. But even the threats from people on the floor have issued to her, veiled threats that they can try to get away with. It takes that much more courage. She's a hero. When I talk about what she does, I believe I'm amplifying good, as is the saying at blueamp.substack.com. We are going to make sure that good people, everybody knows what they're up to out there. You know who else is a good person who we should be amplifying is Vladimir Zelensky, who is maybe the biggest hero in the world right now. He's been betrayed by Donald Trump, who is a traitor. He has been attacked by a murderous dictator. He knows his country made a huge error in trusting the West. Yes, we screwed them. They gave up their nuclear weapons for guarantees of safety. Where are those guarantees? What happened there? They should have been made part of NATO. Oh, no, it may piss Russia off. Kind of reminds me of it may piss the Republicans off if we do it. And of course, you always know they're going to end up doing whatever that is anyhow. Putin was always going to be the end game. And I don't like to be as critical of Democrats, but Joe Biden, when he came into when we started funding after that attack, there should have been no restrictions on the weaponry that we gave to Russia. And that's not just Biden's fault. That was all of NATO. All of NATO was too weak in the beginning. It should have been, you want to fire, the only way you're going to convince the Russians to stop coming after you is make it hurt. And it's a shame because some of their civilians would die, and one innocent civilian is somebody's mother, brother, daughter. It's horrible. But anything they had, we were too late to saying, okay, now you can fire those into Russia. That should have been allowed immediately, initially, because maybe that would have made vast protests, and what would have come out of that would have made the Russians think twice about their willingness to keep waging this war. But I digress. Zelensky's another one that I think is, it's just, he is amplifying him as amplifying good. My friend Bob Seska has Heroes of Democracy as a segment on his show, and Stephanie Miller, who we went on and simulcasted with the other day, also does a Heroes of Democracy segment, I believe. For me, it will be an amplifying good. Jasmine Crockett and Vladimir Zelensky are doing good, very good. And each of them is contributing in a huge way to our fight right now against an authoritarian fascist ideology that has taken grip and, frankly, taken over one of the major parties in this country and led us to a point where we're, I guess, one of the Axis powers now until we get Trump out of there. That vote in the UN is one of the most shameless things that I think this country's ever done, and that's a tough list to make. Not because I hate America. I think America is one of the greatest ideas and at times one of the greatest nations this world has seen. And I think our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, even while we didn't live up to them, were documents that inspired freedom across the world. And we did a lot of good as we moved in a positive direction. But right now, it's not one of those times. And it's important to remember that we have great people here, and we have great people in Congress fighting for us, and we have great people around the country fighting for us, but not the guy in the Oval Office. Not that one. Not that burnt okra animal balloon. Oh. Interesting, Cynthia. Notice you never hear from MTG's kids. Zero support. I didn't even know she had kids. Can minotaurs reproduce? Not sure. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. She failed the GED 3 times. Was that Boebert? I think you're talking about Boebert, John Rankin, and that wouldn't surprise me. I didn't bring in as much stuff today, guys, because I got to be honest, I am still hurting from the other day. We're actually almost at an hour and 40 minutes, so we're not doing badly here. But I think I am going to, French President Macron did well to Kent with lots of numbers. Yes, very much so. Father has full custody is what Jim Williams is saying, which wouldn't shock me. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene could give two craps about her kids. She's an idiot, conspiracy theorist moron on Facebook who turned into a congresswoman. That's then, and she loves that attention. But yeah, I think we'll figure this all out. We'll get to a point where this and Substack will work well side by side. I still would love for you to subscribe to Patreon, which I know I have not paid enough attention to, but now that the launch is over, I will make sure you get all your extra videos. I get some ideas for ways to make sure you're getting everything that you should get and more. And YouTube, obviously, we've been growing again quickly lately. We're past 106,000, on our way to 107. Love it. Keep supporting us, please. Keep subscribing there. And of course, it's Substack, which I've talked about for all of this show. We're really excited about that. So I think that's mostly what I've got. I think I need to thank the folks who have been kind enough to support the show today. And I have to ask who's coming with me. But first, I'm going to say Sheldon Hughes. David was another excellent guest. Gave us $2. Thank you so much, Sheldon. You are the man. John Rankin, who gave us $5. These are super chats. Thank you. I should actually put you on the screen. Would be the nice thing to do. So thank you, Sheldon, as always, a supporter. Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. Jim Williams. Wow, look at that. 10 Cliff's Edge memberships gifted. You are a prince and a gentleman and a scholar. You're all sorts of stuff, Jim. I got to talk to Jim on the phone the other day for the first time. So I know it all to be true. He's not just an online phantom anymore who just comes out of the ether and shows brilliance. I've actually heard the voice and supports the show in an incredible way, I should say, in every way you can. Financially, with his time, and there I've said many times, there will be much that I will do to hopefully pay that debt. Sheldon again, because Sheldon's part of my murderer's row. Cliff is the GOAT of Substack marathons. I may be the only one crazy enough to do one, so there isn't as much competition. But it's a crazy idea and just crazy enough that I knew it would get a lot of attention. I didn't quite know it would go over as well as it did. But you know what? I'm really glad I did it regardless of that. Wow, I get to talk to that many interesting people and get to share them with however many people were watching at those given times. It was just a lot of fun. And that variety of people, I'm glad it wasn't just all, it wasn't all straight out politics. Some people talking about their backgrounds growing, how they became reporters, how they became, comedians, how they became actors, how they became rock stars. It was fun. Just Julie, who asked if I was live and found out I was. And for that, she became a YouTube member. Thank you, Just Julie. I really appreciate it. Love having you here. Appreciate your support of the program. Sheldon, you... Another $2 from Sheldon, who said it was a great marathon the other day, Cliff. Thank you. I enjoyed it. I wish right now it didn't feel as much like a marathon. Ricola, yes, Kent. You can hear my voice already. I'm starting to lose it again, which says it really probably is time for me to say this week should end. But come on, you know the rules, and it can't be Sheldon. Who's coming with me? I just need one of you. Who's coming with me? I need somebody to send me out on a high note. And no, that doesn't mean I want you sending me some gummies. Somebody, one more super chat, one Patreon member, something of that nature. 99-cent super sticker. That's all you got to do. And it supports the show. It supports. I almost hit leave studio. That would have been bad. Help me help you. No, I'm just kidding. As I've said with these things before, usually somebody at the very end as I'm leaving, and there we go. Gene Churchill with a great last name. That is a historic last name. With $4.99 super sticker. Gene, you are fantastic. And you helped me take the way out. Churchill, great wartime leader. Not defending the racism and that stuff, but as a wartime leader, it's a good name, as is Zelensky. And, Gene, you're terrific. And what would we do if we didn't have my friend Sheldon, of course, who is, if I'm the goat of Substack marathons, Sheldon, you are the goat of $2 contributions. Actually, I think I just clicked on the wrong one. That was from before. You've got so many $2 contributions. I can't find them all, which is crazy. Here we are. I get an LOL there. Thank you. Thank you all for supporting the show in any way that you can. Thank you for being here. And we will be back next week. There will not be, even if I end up simulcasting whatever I'll let you know to Substack, there will definitively be a show here unless I'm sick or some other crazy things that happens, obviously. But I will plan to have 3 days, unlike what happened this week, where you only got this 1 day here, even though you got 47 billion hours, it felt like to me on Tuesday. But thank you again. Thanks for all of your support. Thanks to all of you who are signed up for Substack and were there. Thanks to all of you who are here right now. Thanks to all of you who gave super chats and stickers. Thanks to all of you who've joined Patreon and YouTube members. And just, damn it, been here to say that you care about your democracy and care about the fact that I'm doing this. So that's where we'll let this go, guys. You take care of yourselves. I will be back on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, and quite a little bit before and a little bit after. And as I say always, I will say again, as the sun sets slowly in the west, I bid you a fond farewell, my friends.